joining us at this special time on Angel Heart Radio. I'm Annette McCoy, and today I have author and psychic Scott Russell Hill with me from Adelaide.
Hi,
Welcome,
Annette.
Scott. It's lovely to have you with us. And just before we start talking about numerical profiling, I'd like to remind our audience of two things. If you are watching this anywhere else but via Angel Heart Radio Facebook page and you want to interact with us, I suggest you go over to our Facebook page, and you'll be able to interact with us there. May I remind you that these shows should never replace your legal, medical, nor professional advice, nor your own sound judgment. Well, here we are, a long-awaited chat on Angel Heart Radio.
How long?
Oh, it's been a couple of months, I think.
Oh, I thought you meant years.
Oh,
Years.
well, I've certainly wanted to chat with you for years, ever since I read that first book of yours, Caught Between Two Worlds. An amazing,
Thank you.
Amazing book. So, you now would like to concentrate, well, today, on numerical profiling.
Yeah.
Can I ask about what it is exactly?
It's an extensive form of numerology, but it's when you're really getting into the characteristics of the person, what makes them tick, what spiritual cycle they're up to, the positive and negative sides of their behavior. I've done it for the police, profiling criminals and their behavior. I've done it and do it for major companies in Australia and overseas, throughout Asia and America as well, where they're wanting to pick the best employees for the position. Scott, we're looking at Annette McCoy. Here's her date of birth. Is she going to screw us over, or is she going to be the right fit for this position? It's basically things like that.
Right.
But it's a behavioural thing more than anything. And many years ago, when I was doing a radio show that was very successful called Psychic Saturday Night, there was a lady on that show. We were just pumping through. It was a 3-hour show, and it was a #1 show in the city. And we're just pumping through callers. And she would go from dates of birth. They'd all come up on the screen, and she'd be able to just tell things from dates of birth. We all tune in through different modalities. I'm sure that some people can tune in through a pen if they want to, or a schnitzel or whatever their modality is. Mine's with dates of birth. But when I saw what she did, I thought, wow, there's something to this. And then for 3 years after that, whenever I did a reading for somebody, I just said, look, do you mind if I write down your date of birth? I'm just doing my own private little investigation into what makes people tick. And I'm just comparing each date of birth as it comes along. So I did that for 3 years to develop my own system into how I feel that people tick. But it can be for the reasons that I said, of which there's many other ones as well in the corporate, financial and other worlds. But also I had a lady come through for a reading recently, and her daughter, who's 14, the daughter's best friend had killed themselves, unfortunately. And the daughter and this young man had made a pact with each other that they would never do that, because unfortunately youth suicide, particularly in Australia, is very high at the moment. It's very unfortunate. So the mum said, would you be able to help my daughter? And I said, well, I'm sure that I could, but firstly, make sure she wants to see me. I never want to do a reading for someone who doesn't want to see me, because it's awkward and it's difficult and it's not the way to do it. But the daughter really wanted to see me. And I said, make sure you tell her I'm not a medium. I'm not tuning into dead people and passing on messages and all that. But I can behaviorally tell her what was going on with her friend based on his date of birth. And from that, I was able to tell her a whole heap of stuff, including, I said, well, look, this is what he was going through. This is where he was emotionally up to. He would have said things to you like this. And she went, that's exactly what he said to me. And I said, well, in the last 2 years, he would have been dealing with this, this, and this. And this was based on the date. Plus, there's an energy to everything. I'm picking up on stuff more than the dates. And I was able to help her have a greater understanding of it. But also I said to her, and this is why when you said that you wouldn't ever do something like that you meant it. So in the end, the bottom line was I was able to say, here's why he said he'd never do it, but didn't mean it. here's why you said you wouldn't do it, but did mean it. So it was really able to help her on that level. So it's been very interesting where it's been able to help. Yes, particularly I've done a lot of suicide cases where families are trying to struggle and latch on to why a member of their family would have done that, even when they've been dealing with depression or anxiety, or even when it's come out of the blue. There are so many struggles that people face to get answers. And I don't think you always get closure. Having worked on a TV series called Sensing Murder a few years ago and dealing with murder cases and many families who've gone through that, they taught me along the way that for the families of the victims, there is no closure, there's just answers. There's closure for the police, but there's not closure for the family because they never get the loved one back. But again, through dates of birth, I was able to pin things down and sort things out. But it's just very interesting. And as Judge Judy says, after 25 years of doing her first TV show, I know she's doing a new one now, but it seems to be the same in a different room, just with a different name. But I got to interview her many years ago, and she said, Scott, there are no new different people or different cases. It's the same old story, just with a different suit and tie. And it's the same in my, I've heard it all. There's nothing I haven't heard before or dealt with before. So there's a pattern to everything, but it's fascinating how dates work. And may I say too, am I talking too much?
No. I'm fascinated. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. People used to say that because I teach profiling as well. And my students along the way taught me a valuable lesson, Annette, and that was that, yes, you can learn what the numbers mean. And within a couple of hours of starting to learn what they mean, people are able to, they start doing their dates of birth for their family members and they go, oh my God, this is exactly what they're like. But there's an intuitive side to it, obviously, as well, where I jump in with information where they've said, yes, you've explained this really well, but where did the rest of that come from? And I go, oh, okay, so that's not just the numbers, that's just me doing my spooky thing. So there's a bit of a spooky thing to it as well. But what I've learned in recent years especially is that we're all capable of working on the positive or negative side of our date of birth. We all can be having a really bad day or choose just to be awful people, or we can be kind and love and have humility and generosity. And in relationships, there are dates of birth that match up. But if the person that you're matching up with is on the negative side of their date of birth and chooses to stay there, it doesn't matter how good the match is, you're screwed as far as a relationship goes. So I stopped doing, who would my best soulmate be? What date of birth would match up with me? I stopped doing that a few years ago because who knows if the person is on the positive or negative side. Along the way, I have sort of adapted a little bit. When people have asked me, I've gone, well, look, if he or she is doing this, or this, that's the positive side of their date of birth. But if you're seeing this, or this, run.
So, Scott, you mentioned the positive or the negative. Is that the same as in our psyche, if you like? We have a shadow side?
Shadow side and all that is not in my terminology. That's okay.
Are we talking the same thing?
I don't know. I don't know what you mean by shadow side. I mean that you can either be an asshole or a good person.
Okay. I'm saying, yes, I believe we have a shadow side as well as it. And yeah, we need to deal with, I guess, the foibles in our characters.
Well, put it this way, Donald Trump's a Gemini and I'm a Scorpio, but a lot of our numbers and characteristics are the same in our dates of birth. So look at what he does and look what I do, well, what I try to do. So decisions that he makes, he's not always the most generous person, and it's about him, and he can stir the pot greatly and cause a lot of trouble. But there's also a huge capacity for him to do very good things as well. And on some levels, he truly does care. So it's very interesting, whereas I've got very similar things on some levels to him, but I'm completely on the other side of the spectrum. So it's interesting. Donald Trump actually has an extremely spiritual date of birth, but when he's on a negative, it's all about him, and he pouts and he moans and he bitches about everything and carries on like a pork chop. But when he's, on a really good level, he'll go to see Kim Jong-un in North Korea, or he'll deal with Putin and he'll keep peace. So there's a positive and negative side to everyone. Unfortunately, Annette, there's a lot of people out there who just focus on the negative side, and more than ever now, after being locked down for so long, a lot of people have lost their generosity and their warmth and their caring, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, we have to hold the line, Scott. I find it interesting. You're a Scorpio, so am I.
Mm. Well, we promise not to annihilate each other today.
Definitely not.
What day are you on?
Sorry, what was that?
What day number are you born on? Are you October or November?
No. I'm in November. 13th, lucky number.
Blessed number. Yep, cool.
Yeah.
No wonder you do what you do.
Sorry?
Although on a negative, 13-day people of any star sign don't give a shit.
I think really? I should have warned you that we don't swear on Angel Heart Radio. Is that going to be a problem?
I have been known I'm called the swearing psychic. It's part of my lovable character. It's called keeping it. I promise I won't do any more than that. It just slipped out.
Bless you, bless you. Carol and Tony have joined us, and Tony is fascinated, as I am. Oh my goodness. So, birth dates, yes, obviously. I believe we come we choose to come in when we come in. So obviously our birth date does relate to who we are and what we do.
Yes, you're correct there too, but then human intervention comes in sometimes and we are born prematurely or late, or other things happen as well. All I can tell you is that it's a mixture of, yes, we choose to come in, and most times it happens, 9 times out of 10, we come in when we choose to. Other times there's medical reasons why it may be early or late. But the most interesting thing of all is no matter when someone is born, they are exactly what their date of birth says they are. Whatever that day is that they come in on, that's it.
Right. Yes, which is cool. Well, Tony's agreeing with what you said earlier. She's finding many people losing their moral compass.
Yeah.
We're in fascinating times.
When COVID first hit with me, I'd done so much traveling, and I always ask, no matter what the situation, what am I meant to learn from this? And I was just meant to slow down. And I'm not a negative person. I have my negative days like we all do because we're all human, but I always focus on the joy. And even throughout COVID, I was always working towards new things. Like I'm part of the Adelaide Fringe Festival every year. I've got a big show on there called the Adelaide Short Play Festival, where I write scenes as an author and as a writer for young up-and-coming actors to be in a part of a professional show and get seen by, many people. And the Adelaide Fringe is the huge arts festival with plays, performers and entertainers that happens in Adelaide every February and March. And we were on this year. Last year, we did our final performance and then got locked down within about 2 days. This year, it was, are we going to get locked down or not? And I kept saying, let's just focus on the joy. When we couldn't meet face-to-face, we Zoomed. So throughout, and then we were on and we never got shut down, and that was great. So throughout anything, I had some major surgery in the last couple of years. I was fearful the second time because I had a hip replacement the first time around and woke up in the middle of the surgery. And so that was not a pleasant experience, and it did my head in for a short while. But again, I went, what am I meant to learn from this? And what am I meant to be in control of? And when I do readings for people, what must I now adapt for myself that I've always said to other people? So I use everything as a learning curve. But also when you have joy in your life, when you're surrounded by good people, when you know who you are, when you don't have to focus on the negative all the time, to empower yourself, because that's what a lot of people do. There was a lady that I did a show at in Melbourne, actually, and she was just whinging and bitching the whole time, and the audience was getting really sick and tired of her. And I said to her, aren't you sick of whinging and bitching? Like I do call people out for it, when people do that kind of thing. I said, aren't you sick of whinging and bitching about this all the time? And she paused for a minute. She went, well, yes, but if I don't do that, then what am I going to do? Because that Annette would mean she'd have to make different choices. And people like to live in the past because they don't want to deal with the present, or they don't want to plan for the future. I was at the post office the other day, and I've got great friends at the post office near where I live. And the head lady there, she said, "Oh my God, Scott, the people that we're dealing with, they're just so angry." And she said, "I've had a terrible day. Everyone's just yelling and screaming." I'm just not that kind of person, Annette. I don't actually understand the need for it, but I understand why it happens in the end, which is not meant to be. I do understand why people do it, but if you focus on the joy, if no matter what goes on and what happens to you, you can focus on something that brings you joy or aim towards something in the future, like I did with the fringe. And even when I faced the second surgery, I had to go back to the hospital and have my other hip done. It was not the most pleasant thing to want to do that after what I'd been through, but I spoke to the surgeon at length and I spoke to the anaesthetist, and I went back to the same two people that I'd been to in the first place, whereas my family was going, "Why would you go back to the same surgeon and that anaesthetist after you woke up?" And I said, "Because they know me, because they understand what I've been through and they're hearing what I'm telling them." And I managed the second surgery a whole lot differently than I did the first. And it was the easiest thing that I've ever been through. And they really looked after me. The staff at the hospital were fantastic. So when we take charge of things in a positive way, without going, "You did this to me and this, and blame, that's not what it's all about. It's about, here's what I went through. I know I've got to do it again because I can't walk on this leg properly. I need, I just wore out my bits and pieces through all my karate and aerobics and dancing and stuff that I've done over the years." So you've just got to take charge in the most positive way. And if we could all learn to do that and not live in the past and just embrace what we have now, that would be a really terrific thing. And look, we all have our moments with that. We are human after all. But yes, people who live in the past is the biggest thing that I come up against. And it's always someone else's fault.
Right. I like the way you get on well with the people in the post office. My local post office, the girls are lovely, and I'm telling them, because I think, yes, anyone in customer service, especially in the last little while, must have had to take even more. And it's really lovely to be able to say, "Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for showing me this, that, and the other." And it's simple, and it keeps us in a positive way as well as passing it on.
It takes more energy to be angry, bitter, and twisted and not smile. It takes much more energy to do that than it does just to be happy and joyous. I even remember last year, I was in the car park at the shopping centre, and a lady was struggling with her shopping cart last Christmas. I thought, as we're approaching Christmas, it just made me think of it. And I just grabbed the cart and helped her for a moment. And I said, "I'll walk your cart back to the bay where you put it back if you like." And she said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, Merry Christmas." Like, just simple things like that, the look on her face, it just sort of happened and it was spontaneous. But we live in a world now where people, this is it, they're just, even at the gym, they're on their phones and they're so, not everybody, but so disconnected. And they're creating all of this lack of communication and connectiveness with people, and they forget that they don't know how to connect. I've had to train all my young actors, ring me, talk to me, don't text me, don't message me. Every now and then, that's okay, but don't have a full conversation in a text with me. If you want to get on in this industry and you want to get on in life, learn how to communicate with people verbally and face-to-face. It's really valuable. We mustn't lose sight of that.
I totally agree. I think that the last 2 years have certainly asked us to given us the opportunity to slow down, given us the opportunity to focus on what is it that I really want to do, and also, yes, how can I keep my energy up? In what ways can I add positivity to my own day and to other people's?
And also not to live in fear. Everything is fear-based. Everything, fear. Even today, as we do this podcast, I just read something. I was just checking out the news network that I check into, and now there's another variation of COVID, and it's even worse than the other ones. I mean, stand in line. Let's just get on with it. What are we meant to learn from this? Don't get sucked up by all of that kind of stuff. Just keep creating joy. Be kind, be loving, be considerate. That's what empowers us the most as people. That's what keeps us healthy. The sickest people that I've ever met, as in medically sick or physically sick, some of the most bitter, twisted people I've ever met. But there's amazing people who are 100 years old who've just, and I know some of them, they're here. I'm going to see one tonight. She's amazing. She's just always been so kind and so connected, and she's 100 and she's got all the marbles and she's fantastic. So it's amazing what you see. But I've seen other people too who are so negative and got so much going on and their bodies are like this. It just makes it's common sense in the end. Spirituality is simple. People are complicated if they choose to be.
Yeah, and I like that because, yes, it's our choice. And if we find that life is suddenly complicated, it's a case of, okay, can we bring it back to the bones? What is at the base of all of this?
So what's the, you said that you learned a bit from COVID lockdown. What are you meant to learn from it? After basically 2 years of it, particularly where you come from, where there's been many lockdowns, what do you think you've learned the most?
To slow down. People, because I, like you, travelled. And of course, the last time I travelled was March 2020. And people say to me, oh, you must be missing it. And I went, well, no, I'm not. I'm really fortunate that I've done lots and lots of travel. And I also know that I'm going to travel in the future. So this is a time to be with family. I'm incredibly fortunate, Scott, because I'm surrounded by my 3 boys, and my mother at 92 is fit and well on the other side of town. So I see her at appropriate times as well. So, gee whiz, certainly I've always been fairly big on gratitude, but it's certainly been a time of, okay, looking at what I've got and realising just how fortunate I am.
But we also create that. We create that fortune.
Sure. And I decided that I'd much rather be on the positive side of the ledger rather than the negative. So, yes. So, and it, for me too, especially this last 6 months or so, it's been very much, okay, what do I believe? Because yes, we have choices, and sometimes they're not as easy to make. However, that's why I said before, hold the line. I just really believe that no matter what our choice is, to then embrace it. I was told that years and years and years ago, somebody, a yoga mentor of mine, said, you know, if you're faced with dis-ease, accept all of the offers of advice or whatever and put them aside and look at them at your leisure or when you choose to. And then ultimately it's your decision, and embrace that decision.
We never stop learning.
That's true.
Some people do. But as far as I'm concerned, whenever I do a show, whenever I'm on tour, I always say, look, I'm fairly knowledgeable about certain things that I love to be knowledgeable about within spirituality, and I've certainly experienced a lot of things, but I don't have all the answers, and I'm still learning. And I think that's the wonderful thing about life, is to focus on that as well, and always look forward to, well, what am I going to learn next? What am I going to experience next? Who am I going to meet next who's going to be a fantastic person and contribute to my life in some way that just opens my eyes or just makes me feel warm and fuzzy. Kindness, more than anything at the moment, Annette, just people being kind makes me feel warm and fuzzy more than anything. And me just being kind to treat everybody the same, no matter who they are. I always just respond, and not that they can see me smiling underneath my mask, because we still have to wear masks where I am when we go out and about. But I quite often say, I'm smiling underneath the mask. I let them know. So I think it doesn't cost anything, but yeah, it's very special just to be kind. We all need that.
Yeah, we do. Yes. And yeah, Shirley has joined us, and she's talking about how aggressive, how much aggression there seems to be. And of course, we can do our little bit by plugging away, because love does overcome fear. So the more love that we can bring into our life, and the more we can let go of any fears that we're aware of,
the more we keep learning.
Indeed. Yep.
I just find aggression so totally unnecessary. It's always masking or covering up something else that's going on with that person. It replaces other things that they refuse to look at or move on from. And any kind of behavior that people carry on with, whether it's good or bad, is some form of empowerment. And we are all, human beings are very, very focused on being a part of something or holding on to something and just milking it for everything that they can, because we're a very insecure bunch of people. There are many things that make us fearful, and a lot of people who are aggressive, that's overcoming or covering up a lot of the fear that goes on. I know it's out there, and I certainly deal with it from time to time with other people. But again, it comes down to choice. You know, that it's just, for me, it's just not who I am and not who I choose to be. I don't need to be that person because I've worked through my stuff, and I continue to just keep growing and evolving and have learnt along the way. I train, I'm a martial artist, and I still am. And I have a club and I have students and all that. So I'm the head honcho within my club, and I'm part of a bigger organisation. But I got to sit with a grandmaster in Japan when I was 17 on a mountain in Japan and have him talk to me. It's in my first book, and talk to me about spirituality and just behaviour and humanity. And there was just a peace that came from him. This was in Kobe. And I learned so much from just being with him, how peaceful he was, but how knowledgeable he was. But he was confident, but there was no ego, so to speak. He was just this calm, peaceful person. So he was an incredibly special and important mentor to me at a very young age, that someone like him, who was very physically powerful, who could snap you in two with something that he did as a martial artist. Martial artists, on a positive, are the most peaceful, calm people you'll ever meet, because they don't need to do all that physical stuff to show off. But that's where we have also developed the saying, be careful who you pick on. Only an idiot will pick a fight, because you don't know what they do or what their background is. You know, and we've got a lot of ladies in our class who are fabulous martial artists who can't swear on your show. How would I nicely say it? Could take care of someone very well, Annette, with one swift kick. Did I do well? Did I say that? Yeah.
You've done very well, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you.
And they will be impressed.
Thank you. But it's yes, we all, and there's an aggression and an assertiveness that does need to come out of us. It's part of human beings. But if you can direct it through a positivity like martial arts or sport or running or cycling or marathoning or whatever you want to do, or triathlon, or just walking around the block, that's fantastic. So it was that mentorship, though, when I was younger, where I saw how powerful someone could be when they were filled with such humanity and peace. That was a very good example to me, and I strive to do that myself throughout these years.
Well done, because it is.
I'm still learning. I'm still learning.
Oh, aren't we all? I mean, that to me, I figure when I stop learning here, I'll be out of here and learning somewhere else.
And then you look down and go, oh, I didn't know anything while I was there. Now I know for real what's going on now that I'm out here.
Yeah. Hindsight.
And that also, look, we're jumping around a little bit here, but we're being spontaneous. So that's lovely. Even in just you saying that, one of my biggest learning curves was when I was working on Sensing Murder, which, for people who haven't seen the show, it's a psychic detective show. There's been various forms of it around the world. I think it was based on a Danish format initially, but I film my episodes in Australia and in New Zealand, but there's been an American version as well. But I remember, Annette, I was in Melbourne out at the Faulkner Cemetery, which is about 10, 11 Ks north of Melbourne. Yep. And it was the first case that I was working on. And I won't say the name of the case or anything now. Doesn't matter. In respect to the family, one won't draw all that up again because they've been through enough grief. But I thought when I worked on the first episode of Sensing Murder that I'd pick up on all this pain and grief and hostility and sadness from the person on the other side. And I stood on, is it Sydney Road? You're from Melbourne. Is it Sydney Road that goes up alongside the cemetery, or Sydney Highway? Yeah. I was standing there. It was quite a busy road. And I said to the production crew, look, whoever this person is who's passed over, and it's a female energy, please let the family know that there is so much peace coming from this person. There is no grief. There is no hostility. There's no sadness. And I learned through her that it's us who have all that. It's those of us who are left behind who go through all those emotions, and that people in spirit, once they shed this physical body, they don't feel that, because every case I worked on, and it'd be 14 or 15 cases in the end between Australia and New Zealand over a period of a couple of years, I always felt the same thing from the person in spirit. And that was a huge learning curve for me, because I assumed to have completely the opposite to that, but it wasn't. And that was a very inspiring experience for me, and helped me not buy into all of that as I was working on the show, you know, surrounded by people who are upset, or people who are worried what to do with the ashes, or does my grandfather still love me, or is my daughter in pain because of the way that she died, or my son, you know, because of this happened. And I would say to people, no, they're fine. It's you who has the pain. It's you who is suffering. They're in spirit just sending you love, joy, and humility and compassion. And that's what I learned. That was such a powerful experience for me, because it came unexpectedly. I actually stood on next to the Faulkner Cemetery on Sydney Road going, oh my God, wow, really? This is what I'm picking up on? And you know, then Annette, I started going, oh my God, am I making this up? Is this what I want to feel from this person? How could this be, considering the way that she passed over? Not that I knew at that stage how she passed over, but if I'm working on a show called Sensing Murder, I'm assuming it wasn't pleasant. So, and it wasn't. It was not a pleasant thing that happened to her. But look, that was a huge learning curve for me about people in spirit and the roles that they have, and how they communicate to us, or what they put around us once they pass over. It's really us who are left behind, who deal with all the other stuff. And fair enough, that's part of going through loss and grief and humanity. But in the end, they just want us to not get on with it. But again, these people like Daniel Morecambe up in Queensland here in Australia, whose son disappeared, and then they found him, or found what happened to him many years ago. They have their Walking for Daniel thing every year, where they all put on the red T-shirts. That's his colour. And there are people who certainly have done things over the years. I think that's a really powerful and positive thing to do. It never replaces the person. It doesn't take away the grief or the loss, but to turn any situation into a positive is one of the most wonderful things that we human beings can do.
Indeed. And it is interesting how many people do find create a foundation or something that helps remember their loved one, and also helps them to move on, because you're right, their grief is being channeled into something positive.
It helps people learn, and helps people be a part of something that's positive, and it brings out again that humanity in people. So I think that's a really, really wonderful thing. Or even when someone, is sick, and they pass over from an illness, and there's things that we need to learn, or there's research that needs to be done. So let's all get together and help towards that, and help raise money for that research, so that other people don't have to go through the same, or that the impact of this disease is less because of something that we discover along the way. So there's so many positive things that we can channel our energy into, other than just being bitter and twisted. So, yeah.
I hear you. And I guess I've known for a long time that once we pass into spirit, everything is love. We look I believe that from that aspect, yes, all we see a life on earth through love. So I've heard along the way that it grieves our loved ones up there to see us struggling. They want us to continue happily. I mean, obviously, yes, there's a hole in our lives. However, we will meet again one day, and in the interim, what can we do? And I think also knowing, that's why I like these types of shows, where people's ideas are extended and they realise that, yes, we do live on, and that, yes, we're here on earth having a human experience, and it's simply one in lots and lots and lots of experiences.
Nothing more I can say to that.
Yeah. So for people who are grieving, especially if they've lost people through suicide, and that is huge in Australia at the moment, yet to be able to know, as you were able to help that young girl, how wonderful to be able to point out to her that she and her gorgeous friend were coming from, even though they'd said the same words, they didn't have the same power.
Because she really meant what she was saying. She's a different star sign, different numerical profile, and different behavior, different family background and everything. He was more saying things to make her feel better. He'd already given up. And that was a thing along the way. I said, look, with whatever he was telling you, he'd actually given up. And he said that to me a couple of times.
Wow.
He said those actual words, I've given up. And she was trying to talk him out of that, to which he said, look, I'd never do anything silly. I'd never, kill myself or anything like that. But those words were empty. He was just saying it to protect her or to throw her off the scent of what he planned to do. But there was other things too that were really nice. Like, that's a bit sad. But some really positive things came out of it. More than anything, the young girl's mum, both these people were 14. The young man that took his life was 14 and this girl is 14. The mum was just worried that she would do the same. So she'd had a reading with me. Then, would I talk to the daughter? Yes, if the daughter wants to. So this is where, when you do a reading, when you work in my world, those who I say, I'm trying to figure out the right way to say it, it's a huge responsibility. It can't be about your ego and what you want from it and saying wildly things just to impress people. I'm always really aware. It's not always as serious a situation as that, but a reading is just about passing on information to someone so that they can make their own choices. You're not there to make the choices for them. You're there to empower them to make more informed decisions and choices. That's what a reading should be. And it shouldn't be about your ego and now I pick up on this and isn't this amazing? That doesn't help anyone. What helps someone is, this is the kind of thing that this young man would have said to you. This is why he didn't mean, because of this, and this that he was working through or dealing with. And all of that was true. And it wasn't me. It wasn't the angels telling me that. It wasn't people in spirit passing on that message. I'm focused on the dates, using my intuition to sort out my process of how, and my modality of what I do. And it's just really important just to be simple and truthful and respectful, but not complicated, and not to fill it up with a reading up with a whole lot of things and information that you don't need to put into it. Because again, it comes back to spirituality is really simple. It's really simple in the end, and a lot of people tell me that they're lost and confused. And my response to that always is, no, you're not. You just didn't do what you should have done in the first place.
That's a bit like, yes, if we feel that we're hitting our head against a brick wall all the time, I always think, well, that's telling us the wall's there for a reason. We need to have a look at where we are and what our recent choices have been.
Well, when we don't listen. To listen is one of the most important things, to yourself, to what's going on around you. But people don't listen. They don't. Well, not everyone listens, and they forget about their intuition. And being psychic or spiritual, psychic is just a higher form of intuition. We're all intuitive, and we all have the ability to be psychic because we're all spiritual people. So that's my little simple way of looking at that. Why am I saying that? It's because the point I'm trying to make is that if people just followed their intuition and did what they wanted to do from the start, instead of bending and weaving to please other people, then they wouldn't end up in such terrible situations that they feel trapped in or lost and confused in, because they've given up so much of their own power and gone against their intuition to an extent that they end up in what I call spiritual quicksand. They've gone so far over into this land that they shouldn't have. They should have stepped right back from it from the start and gone, no, this is what I want to do. I don't want to marry this person. I don't want this job. I don't want to do what these people are asking of me. I'm going to do what I want to do. That's when I say, no, you're not lost or confused. You just didn't do what you should have done in the first place. And do you know, Annette, in the 150 years or so that I've been doing readings, it's been a long time. I've done a few thousand million along the way. It's interesting with people. I have never, and I'm going to use ladies as an example of this, because I have dealt with a lot of ladies over the years who are not in great marriages. And there is not one in all those years, and this is honest truth, who has ever said, like I've said to them, you must have known something from the start. There was something that warned you not to do this, because you would have known. Because even in the dates, it doesn't work out. Like even when you look at the dates of birth and I go, I don't get this, something's going on here. But if something doesn't eventually work out, no matter what it is, there's something not quite right at the beginning. And I had a lady through the other day who's 63 or 4, lovely lady, really had looked after herself. She just was a stunning looking, beautiful person. But the husband's walked out on her, and Scott, why would he do that after 40 years of marriage? And I just don't understand it. And I said, but for him to do this now means that something wasn't right from the start. I mean, that's where I keep it simple. There's just a simple logic. And I said, your dates don't quite match up either. I said, why did you marry him? And she just looked at me and she said, what do you mean? I said, I mean exactly what I'm asking you. Why did you marry him? And she went quiet for a minute and she said, well, I didn't actually want to, but all the invitations were printed.
Oh.
So that's what I'm talking about. So no one is ever lost and confused with any situation. And what was interesting too, there was a guy that I did a reading for. It was before we got locked down, and he was playing the lost and confused card as well. And he was 26, 27. And he said, I'm just really lost and confused. I don't know what to do. And I went, no one is ever lost and confused. We all know how we feel and what we want, but life and circumstance sometimes dictates that we make other choices. So if we take that off the table and you are not lost and confused and cannot tell me I don't know, because I don't accept I don't know as an answer, what do you really want to do with your life? And he went to go, I don't know again. And then he went quiet. And because that was the conversation. It was about his career and his personal fulfillment on a career level. And he said, I just don't know what to do. Anyway, he said, actually, I do know I wanted to be an astronaut, but that would have meant going to America. That would have meant doing this, this, and this. It would have cost a lot of money. And his mother has MS. The father has died, and he's the carer for his mum. So this I don't know was coming from that situation where he knew what he wanted to do, but there was no way that he was going to leave his mum. And he couldn't, and he didn't want to. So he knew that the astronaut thing was gone, but that's what he really wanted to do. So the I don't know was more about, now, what else do I do? Because this is what I wanted to do, and I know that I can't. And life and circumstance dealt him a different choice. But through acknowledging that, I said, well, what are we meant to learn from this? How can we turn this into a positive? Aside from what you do and how you care for your mum, what can we do for you to inspire you, to make you feel that you are achieving or still fulfilling? And we actually mapped out a path that included astrophysicists and astronaut type things and being in touch with certain organizations. He may not get to fly, not on the space shuttle, that's not around anymore, but whatever Elon Musk comes up with next, or Virgin Galactic, he'll find his way. But we needed to find a path that didn't exclude him completely. He felt that it was just gone completely.
Right.
And people lose their focus. So that's where a reading with me will help with people. I refocus them and reposition. There was a young guy, well, his mum came through first, and she said, would you read for my son? He's about to hop on a flight. And this was, again, 2 years ago before we shut down. He's going back to Italy on Tuesday. This was a Friday. He's going on Tuesday because he's trying to get into a soccer team overseas, and it just never happens. It's not happening the way that he wants. And I said, sure, I'll see him if he wants to see me. He came the next day, and I was brutally honest with him, but I'm always supportive. But I'm the impartial spiritual guy on the outside looking in. And I just said, from your date of birth, you're meant to be the trainer, not the sports, not the person playing it. You're meant to teach it.
Right.
And I said, there's a side of your date of birth that's very inspirational, and you'd be very good at doing a TED talk or some kind of inspirational talk. And he sat back in his chair and he went, I did that Thursday night with a soccer club. And I said, did you enjoy it? And he went, I actually did. I'd like to do that. Do you want to teach? Yeah, I do. I'd like to teach. And I said, look, whether you get on the plane on Tuesday or not, and this was the third time he was going to try, and it was costing lots of money and there's lots of disappointment along the way. I said, what are you meant to learn from this? That maybe you're meant to coach instead. And anyway, I said, whether you get on the plane or not is your choice. I'm just letting you know I probably wouldn't. I think that you need to focus on this instead, that you need to just make peace with the other thing that hasn't been working and focus over here. He's now running all these soccer schools around Adelaide. He texts me every now and then and sends me a picture of all these students he's got and says, we all want to thank you for telling me not to get on the plane. I mean, I didn't say don't go, I said it's your choice, but he didn't end up catching that plane. And we refocused him in a different direction, which was all his choice. I just gave him an opinion. So, but it supports, and he's doing so well. He'd be 23, 24 now, and he's absolutely excelling. Doesn't miss the fact that he never made an international soccer team. He's achieving so much here. So he's fulfilling himself. So again, through that, here's this nice young guy who's communicating. He's not aggressive. He doesn't have to go to the post office and be nasty to the staff. This is what we all need. We need to fulfill ourselves. Yes. And to listen to what's really going on. And sometimes the path that we're going down isn't quite the right one and not going to work. Sometimes we just need to accept that, whether it's a job, career, relationship, anything. Sometimes we just got to, do you know what? No. But we human beings, sometimes through insecurity, we keep pushing and pushing and pushing at things that don't work. And then we lose that sense of ourself. I should be quiet now. I've been talking a long time and I'm thirsty.
Well, you're doing extremely well. And I know that you have a website. What's the best way if people are intrigued by what you have said and would like to use your services? Maybe they need a little bit of guidance at the moment.
scottrussellhill.com.au.
Beautiful.
All one word, Scott Russell Hill, all lowercase, one word. And there's a reading section in there, and we just put up, I only put ahead dates 1 month at a time. I don't like to be booked out too far in advance so that people aren't waiting too long. So we've just put some dates up between beginning of December and just before Christmas when I take a break. But you can book in online. It's easy.
Fantastic. Now, Scott, I like the way that you put your own boundaries in. That's something else that I think maybe COVID has taught us. I know some of my younger friends have said, don't know how we kept going. They were, on the treadmill of working all week and then socializing all weekend and wondering why they felt really pushed. So it's important, isn't it, for us to put the personal boundaries in and say, well, this is what time I've got, and this is what time I wish to give to whatever particular activity it might be.
I remember when I was 18, I don't drink. It was a decision that I made when I was 18. I was sitting in a pub with some friends and I wasn't drinking then. But to be a part of that group of people, I was told, we're uncomfortable around you, Scott. You're not drinking. To be part of the group, you need to drink. And it was up to the fourth round. And I remember a guy sitting at the bar and he's looking at his fourth beer and they're all encouraging him to drink. And he's sort of looking at it and staring at it and his hands started to shake because he just didn't want to drink it. And that was real, I won't say that was the turning point, but it was just another reminder. I mean, between then and whatever, I'd certainly had a lot of experiences and loss as a young fella. My best mate died in my arms when I was 17. Wow. There had been things along the way that had impacted me. And so by the time this experience at the pub came around, I just thought, I always want to be in control. I don't want to be drunk. I don't want to be on drugs. I don't need to drink to please other people, to be part of a group, and they're all reasonable people. But I just thought, I don't need to do what you need me to do what you want from me, for me to be a part of whatever. So, and that's how I do my readings. my readings, I do my way. If you don't like the way I do my readings, then go see somebody else who does it the way that you want them to do it. But if you don't draw parameters in how you work, you're not at your best, no matter what you do. So it's if you've got something wrong with your feet, you don't want a brain surgeon operating on your feet, or someone who thinks just because they're a doctor they can do your feet. You need the specialist in the right area. If you want numerical profiling or inspiration on your career or whatever, I'm your person to help you learn all about yourself and where you're going and what you're doing and empower yourself. That's what I love to do. I've done many things over the years. I've tried the medium thing. It didn't quite work. Sensing murder was not being a medium. Being a psychic detective is a totally different thing where you're picking up on clues and images and sounds and things. There are so many variations to what we do. But boundaries are really, really important. And Annette, the word no is a fantastic, simple word. No.
It's interesting you say that, Scott, because a girlfriend of mine a few years ago was coming up to retirement, in inverted commas, and she said, oh, so what do I need to know? And I said, that's the word you need to know, because suddenly if we have more time, people think, oh, so-and-so can do it because Annette can do it because she's got all of this time. So again, it comes down to personal choice. Who is in charge?
And I think too, what I learned along the way, I totally agree with that, is that sometimes, well, we quite often want to meet the expectations or live our lives according to other people's rules. And what I learned along the way, Annette, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but the human race is a really messed up bunch of people until they get their act together. You know, they all need to evolve and grow and become individual. And we tend to live our lives through other people, whether it's the Kardashians or whatever it is, you know, but we need to be ourselves and have that sense of self. And along the way, I looked at people and thought, well, why would I want to be like them or live my life to impress them when they're so screwed up themselves? And that's what I learned through doing readings. And again, I don't mean it in a disrespectful way, but the human race has taught me along the way that we're a very fragile people who deal with a lot of emotional stuff that we keep inside and secret. And until you do, some of the most impassioned and powerful people I've met, like my mentor in Japan and others along the way, are those who've dealt with all that kind of stuff, who don't have anything to prove, who've learnt the word no, who are kind and generous and giving, but have their parameters. After I did Sensing Murder, I was inundated with people who wanted me to contact their loved ones on the other side. And I said, but I'm not a medium. Oh, but, you know, you did it on Sensing Murder. No, I didn't. I was a psychic. It's a completely different thing. If you want a medium, go see John Edward or someone who stands on a podium and says, I'm picking up on something in the person in the back row. I said, I've never done that. It's not who I am. But there are people out there who claim to do everything. They call themselves psychic mediums, that they use big terms, and I'm this and I'm that and I'm clairaudient and I'm this and I talk to the angels and whatever. It's like the brain surgeon saying, and I do feet, I do hands, I do elbows, I do eyeballs, I do stomach surgery. We can't possibly do everything. We need to focus on one thing and stick to that and be good at it. So I had to deal with a lot of people after Sensing Murder who were in grief, who were told he doesn't do that. This is what he does, but but I want you to do this. You did it here, and they've decided that because of what they saw, they've filtered it through their head that this is what I do. So now do it because I want you to do it because I'm in grief. That was but I had to stick to my guns. Another interesting thing that human people have taught me as well. I remember doing a show in Bunbury, which is south of Perth in Western Australia, about an hour 50 drive, and been there quite a few times now. But I did a big show there at the Bunbury Convention Centre or whatever it was, the Bunbury Theatre. And when I do a show, I just perspire through my shirt, like my shirt just gets saturated and my hair's sticking to my face because I'm just giving so much energy, and I'm on stage for 2.5 hours. And at the end of that show, I said to everyone that was there, I said, look, I'm absolutely exhausted. I'm happy to shake your hand. I'm happy to say hello, but please don't ask me any questions because I will say no, because I'm just exhausted. If you want me to sign a book, talk to me about anything, just in general, I'm happy to say hello, but please don't ask me anything. Every single person who came up to me afterwards said, look, I know you told me not to ask anything, but could I ask you one thing? And I went, no. And a few of those people went on Facebook, and I'm not allowed to swear on Angel Radio. They swore on Facebook and said what a not nice person I was, because all they did was ask me a question and I refused to answer. So this is where, even when you tell people your parameters and then they go to break them and you go, no, then they still get antsy because you didn't do what they wanted you to do. And that's a big lesson that we all need to learn along the way is no, too bad. And I just accept that there will be people who'll say not so nice things about me because I don't please them in the way that they want to. But we all deal with that, whether professionally or in family or within friends. There's always people who, through their own negativity, will focus at you and throw things at you, which reflects the worst side of their behaviour. But can you imagine? There was 500 people that night. There was a capacity of 500 in that theatre in Bunbury. Every single person who came up to me said the same thing. Could you imagine another 100 people after a show when I'm just exhausted? I just want to, I know you said not to, but can I just ask you one thing? No.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's where people push you in there.
They do, yes. The thing is, comes back to personal responsibility, doesn't it? Because it's really easy to throw the blame elsewhere. Those people who didn't get what they wanted, of course, wanted to hit out at you, rather than looking at and going, oh, well, why did he say no? Because he'd already said, please don't. And they hadn't listened because they were so intent on what they wanted.
And that's what people do. So since that, the story I told you about sitting in the pub with those lads when I was 18 and they're all getting drunk, and I've been the designated driver ever since then, Annette, because I always wanted to be in control. I always wanted to know what was going on, and I was physically the designated driver for my mates for quite a while there. And I've always joked along the way, I said, if I ever end up in court on drink driving charges, you'll know that I've been set up because I've never drunk in my whole life. You know, something's gone dramatically wrong then. But throughout life, I'm the designated driver of my own life. I have my rules, my parameters. I'm in control. I'm still learning. I don't know everything, but I've got a pretty good handle on life and what makes people tick and what makes spirituality tick. I was going to say people in spirit tick. It's all comes together, but in the most simple way. And you know, it's the most simple things in life that are the most wonderful. It's the unconditional love your pet gives you. It's the smile a baby will give you. It's just, you know, the kindness in somebody's eyes. That's what we all need. These are the most important things, but to be in control and to have parameters and to learn the word no and stick to it.
Ending with smiles. Now, people, if you would like to reach out to Scott, scottrussellhill.com.au is the place to go. Go and check out Scott's website. It's quite interesting. Scott, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on Angel Heart Radio. Thank you so much. It, as I said at the beginning, it had been a desire of mine for years and years and years. And isn't it wonderful when we actually achieve our desires? That's probably another show in itself, because I've discovered that the more I know what I want and let it go, then it's delivered in time.
I just think it's interesting how it all happened, because I did a reading for a friend of yours, Adam, who's on his way to London, I think. He's finally got there today, hasn't he? And it sort of happened. He talked about you, and then you talked to him, and he said that he'd spoken to me, and it all happened as it was meant to.
Indeed.
And it came together very easily, didn't it?
Yes, it did. And how interesting after that desire for so long, and the fact that I met Adam on a trip to India. So I do delight in the way the universe delivers.
Yeah.
So thank you indeed. And Thank you to our audience. I will be back at my normal time next week, 10 a.m. Melbourne time. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you, Scott.